You've made a colossal blunder. You're fired. Don't you dare show your face at the office again. After bellowing these words, Mr. Anderson, the department head, stormed out of the room. So, I'm getting the axe, huh? I've been a solid contributor to the company, never slipping up big time. But it looks like I've gotta hit the job market again. But then, just 2 days into my sacking, my cell suddenly starts ringing. Thank goodness, Mr. Jack, you've picked up. Could you come back to the office right away? Hearing that, I arrived at the office and what I saw was, my name is Jack. I live with my gentle wife and an energetic 8-year-old son, making us a family of 3. I work for a subsidiary of a major food manufacturer, handling the ordering and delivery of food products. Handling both commercial products for restaurants and eateries and retail items for home use means inventory management is a real challenge. It's a job that demands constant attention to avoid mistakes, but I've managed to work efficiently without any major errors so far. However, there's one troublesome guy at work. Hey, Jack. You were supposed to finish this report by today, right? The one calling out to me loudly is Mr. Anderson, the department head. Mr. Anderson, my boss, is younger than me, in his 40s. The reason being, Mr. Anderson is the son of the department head at the parent company, a major food manufacturer. He's always bossing me around with his arrogant attitude. Moreover, he's the kind who always thinks he's right, yet ironically, he's pretty hopeless at his job. He's been the department head for just 2 weeks now, but Mr. Anderson seems to have taken a disliking to me. He comes by daily, dumping more work on my desk. After you're done with that, get these documents ready too. Hurry up, he orders. Yes, sir. Act on your own before your boss tells you to. Seriously, you're so clueless. Mr. Anderson tossed a stack of documents onto my desk roughly and then left the room. As I gathered the scattered papers, I could hear my colleagues whispering nearby. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but being in the same room, I couldn't help but overhear. Mr. Anderson is always so hard on Jack. Jack is meticulous in his work, and he never makes mistakes. I wonder why. But Jack does seem kind of spacey. At his age, he doesn't have a title, right? Maybe he's not interested in climbing the ladder. Well, with his personality, it does seem hard for him to get ahead. Even when Mr. Anderson, who's younger, scolds him, he just grins. Listening to my colleagues' quiet laughter, I sighed. Let them say what they want. I'm just doing my job my way. While thinking that handling my assigned tasks is my own way, I kept working on the tasks assigned by Mr. Anderson. But one day, as I was working as usual, a colleague suddenly started panicking. He was apologizing repeatedly, sweat beading on his forehead, while talking on the phone. Wondering what was going on, I watched as the colleague who just hung up the phone came towards me. Jack. What's this all about? Me? What do you mean? The colleague handed me a note. It detailed a complaint from a major client. What do you mean? We ordered 50 regular items for commercial use and 500 household items as samples to distribute. But we only received the 50 commercial items. We received a call scolding us that they were supposed to distribute the household items to customers at an event in 3 days. They were quite upset. That can't be. Are you kidding? I've never made such a mistake before, and I was sure I had checked everything this time. I started to panic a bit. I handle orders for 2 types of products, commercial and household items. The large packs for commercial use and the smaller. Individually packaged household items use are easy to mix up because they have the same product name. I was especially careful because it's prone to errors, and I always checked thoroughly since mistakes are irreversible. But, the fact that we're getting a complaint now means. I quickly shifted my focus, opened my computer, and checked the order form. The order form only showed a record of 50 items for commercial use. That's strange. I'm sure I ordered 500 household items as well. I couldn't believe my eyes, feeling the blood drain from my face. Then, in the next moment, Mr. Anderson's loud voice echoed throughout the room. What a mess you've made, you incompetent employee. No, but I'm sure I ordered 500 household items too. Quiet. You only ordered the commercial items, didn't you? Instead of making excuses, do whatever it takes to gather 500 household items. Mr. Anderson pushed me back to my desk and stormed out of the room, fuming. My colleagues watched the exchange between me and Mr. Anderson with concern, but none of them offered to help. Anyway, I've got to gather the household items. I hurried back to my desk and started calling our branches. I'm sorry for the sudden call. If you have any spare household items, could you please send them over? Please, I beg you. Thank you so much. I'll definitely repay this favor. Still 240 items short. Only 3 days left until the event with our client. Will I be able to gather all 500 items in time? No time to hesitate. I just need to do whatever I can right now. I made call after call, addressing the situation. I'm terribly sorry. Yes, thank you, I appreciate it. I kept bowing my head and asking if they had any stock available. Even if it was just one item, I personally drove to pick it up. 70 items left. And then, the day before the event. Holding a box filled with the products, I bowed deeply. Thank you so much for everything. I'm truly grateful. Finally, I managed to secure the 500th item. Thus, I was able to prepare the planned quantity just in time for the client's event. Immediately after, I went to deliver to the client, but the person in charge looked down at me with eyes full of anger. What's going on here? We've had a long business relationship with your company, but I've never had such an experience before. Sorry, but I can't trust you anymore. Our business dealings are over. The client, still angry, took the products and slammed the door shut right in front of me. I slumped for a while but eventually trudged back to the office. I had done everything I could. But when I returned to the office, there was Mr. Anderson, arms crossed, wearing a menacing expression, waiting for me. You've made a disastrous mistake this time. Such blunders can jeopardize the company's reputation. You're fired. Leave immediately. Don't ever come back to the office again. After berating me loudly, Mr. Anderson left the room. I walked back to my desk, head hung low. So, I'm being fired, huh? My mistake has caused trouble for the company. I've contributed without any major errors until now, but it seems I need to find a new job. At my age, without having made any significant career advancements, job hunting is going to be tough. What should I tell my wife and son when I get home? Filled with anxiety, I packed up my belongings. After the regular work hours, I bowed to my colleagues. I'm sorry for the inconvenience I've caused due to my actions. Thank you for your hard work. I'll be taking my leave now. Feeling sorry, yet apologizing to everyone, I left the office. Once I finished the procedures to use my remaining paid leave, there was nothing left for me to do at this company. These last 3 days have really been exhausting. Rotating my neck and shoulders, I could hear them crack. How should I talk to my wife and son when I get home? Will they be disappointed in me, think of me as a failure? No, they'll greet me with smiles as usual. Considering my family's nature, they probably won't say anything to blame me. But for me now, that thought seemed even harder to bear. Despite my doubts, my feet naturally followed the path home, and now my house is just in front of me. I'm home. Welcome back, Dad. You're late. Oh. You don't look well. Is something wrong? Holding my energetically jumping son, I shake my head with a smile at my wife's question. Yeah, just a little something. I'll talk about it later. All right. Let's have dinner after you change. I slowly headed to my room. My wife and son greeted me with smiles, just as I thought they would. That's why it's even harder to figure out what to say to them. Anyway, let's talk after dinner. Regaining my composure, I returned to the living room where my wife and son were waiting. Let's eat. Let's eat. So, what's going on? You seem a bit down. Dad, did something happen? Hearing my wife and son take turns expressing their concern for me, my heart started pounding loudly. But I couldn't keep it hidden forever. I braced myself, took a deep breath, and began to speak slowly. I'm sorry, both of you. It looks like I've been fired from my job. Hearing my words, my wife's eyes widened in shock, seemingly unable to say anything. Instead, it was my son who raised his voice. Awesome. Dad, you don't have to go to work anymore. Yeah, that's right. I'll be home for a while starting tomorrow. Yay! Yay! Then let's go to the amusement park. I've been wanting to go. My son looked at me with a beaming smile. Faced with my son's unexpected reaction, I could only stare back at him. Then my wife began to smile quietly. That's a great idea. Dad has been really busy lately, it'll be good for him to relax. I'm happy to have you at home too. Stunned by my wife and son's responses, I was at a loss for words. But at the same time, I felt incredibly relieved. I see. Neither of them blames me for being fired. I guess it's okay for me to stay at home for a while. Come to think of it, since our son grew up, we haven't really gone out much. I left all the childcare and household matters to my wife, so maybe it's good that I can now spend time with the family. Chewing over these thoughts in my mind, I smiled at them both. Yeah, let's go to the amusement park this weekend when school is out. Yay! It's a promise, Dad. I'm looking forward to it already. The living room fills with the happy voices of my family. What a warm and joyful dinner table this is. I'm lucky to have such happy moments. With a slightly relieved feeling, I continued my meal. But the next morning, after taking my paid leave, my cell phone suddenly rang. The caller was a colleague from work. I wonder what it is. Did I make another mistake? Feeling a bit anxious, I answered the phone. Hello, this is Jack. Good, you answered, Jack. I'm sorry to bother you during your leave, but could you come to the office right away? Does this mean there's a problem? Sorry, but please come back immediately. I can't discuss the details over the phone, but I really need you to return as soon as possible. Understood. I'll head over right away. Urged by my colleague's rushed voice, I quickly got ready. My wife looked at me with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? Did the office call? Yeah, I've been called in. I'm heading out now. I arrived at the office 40 minutes after receiving the call. As I headed to my department, a colleague rushed over to me. Jack. Good, you're here. Please come with me, quickly. Following my hurried colleague, I tilted my head in confusion. Why such urgency? What could have happened? While running, my colleague began to explain the situation to me. According to him, the morning after I was fired, the president of the company came to our department, visibly upset and angry. Why isn't he not here? Explain this to me. Do you mean Jack? We won't have any problems without someone like him. Mr. Anderson, who was present, tried to calm the president, but this only made the president angrier. What are you talking about? Just call Jack back immediately. And so, they tried to contact me immediately. Hearing my colleague's story, I was puzzled and shook my head. But I was fired, wasn't I? My colleague, equally confused, could only offer a bewildered expression. I was led to a room where the president and a scowling Mr. Anderson were already waiting. Jack. Glad you could make it back. I was fired, you know. Hearing the word fired, the president looked momentarily surprised. Then his cheeks relaxed into a hearty laugh. There's no way we'd fire you. If you were gone, who would handle the communications with our clients? Saying this, the president showed me his computer screen. It displayed the order page for our products. Finding a section marked with a red warning sign, I couldn't help but exclaim. Hold on, this is odd, President. It seems no orders have been placed since the day after I was fired and took my paid leave. Well, that's because you weren't here. Why can't orders be placed without me? Because this is a job that only you, Jack, can do. The president said this and then handed a memo to Mr. Anderson, who had been sitting quietly. Mr. Anderson, could you please place this order? Yes, sir. Mr. Anderson took the memo and moved to the computer. However, he stopped as he was about to start typing, looking perplexed. President, what does this say? I need it written in Japanese to place the order. Hearing Mr. Anderson's words, the president started laughing heartily. After calming down from his laughter, the president looked straight at me. So, Jack, can you place the order written on the memo Mr. Anderson is holding? No, President. If I couldn't do it, there's no way Jack can. Just stand up and give the memo to Jack. At the president's command, Mr. Anderson, returning to his grumpy expression, reluctantly handed me the memo. While pushing the memo into my hand, Mr. Anderson glared at me as if to say, "There's no way you can do this." I took the memo and sat in front of the computer as instructed, checking the order details. Then, I began to input the order as usual. This is a food product from Singapore. I'm placing the order now. Is that in English? It looks like completely different words are written there. The next one is an Australian product. What is this product called? I can't read this. Mr. Anderson spoke to me, but I continued to input and place orders for the items on the memo. After entering all the items on the memo, I looked at the president's face. If there are more, I can order them right away. It's about time for the regular order with South Africa, isn't it? Right, someone bring over any order requests. With Jack back, we can handle them quickly. As the president's words echoed, several employees hurried over. Mr. Jack, could you please handle this? And this one too, please. It's urgent. As I busily input orders handed to me one after another, I could hear Mr. Anderson grumbling in the distance. I can't believe it. How can that incompetent Jack handle orders? That's when it hit me. It seems Mr. Anderson didn't know that I'm well versed in English dialects. In fact, during my student days, I studied various English dialects from around the world and nearly scored a perfect TOEIC score. I especially studied English influenced by local languages in places like Singapore and South Africa. So I didn't have to look up local words for each order. Being able to read and write all the interactions with traders from various countries had been incredibly helpful in our dealings. After entering all the requested orders, I meticulously checked each product name and quantity for accuracy. All right, everything looks correct. Sending now. I felt relieved after successfully completing the orders, but then I noticed something unusual. Huh? What's this? This computer is dedicated to order processing. And it's designed to display the order history and the last update history upon completion of the ordering process. Moreover, to operate this computer, one must enter their employee ID, which also records the name of the employee who was handling it. When I checked the records, the last update date was still set to the day I was declared fired. However, the last person to update was recorded as Anderson. I see. So that's what happened. What's the matter, Jack? With all my questions now clear, I stood up vigorously. The ordering error the other day wasn't due to my input mistake. Isn't that right, Mr. Anderson? No, what are you talking about now? It was your mistake that got you fired. Mr. Anderson retorted, his face turning bright red after being pointed out by me. Pointing at the computer screen I had been operating, I argued desperately. The orders were your specialty, weren't they? Plus, you just said that only you can read that incomprehensible English. Still refusing to admit it, huh? Then, let me show you the evidence. With that, I quickly printed out the screen. Then, I showed the printed paper to everyone present. Look here. The last updated by section shows the name Anderson, doesn't it? No, that's... Anderson, the department head, muttered in a fluster, waving his hands, but everyone's gaze was fixed on the paper I was holding. The president took the paper from me, carefully examining Anderson's name. After a while, he spoke in a solemn tone. It seems you are the one who should leave this company, Mr. Anderson. No, this is some kind of mistake. As Anderson turned pale, trying to make excuses. The president, with a stern look, declared to him. I'll be reporting this matter to your father as well. Be prepared for the appropriate actions to be taken. The president, after giving Anderson a long, hard look, walked away from the scene. Anderson let out a short cry before collapsing weakly to the floor. Meanwhile, I was surrounded by my colleagues who all started talking to me at once. Jack. We had no idea you had such a skill. Honestly, we thought you were incompetent at your job. We're really sorry about that. I thought you were a bit odd and didn't talk much. Sorry about that. Don't worry about it, you guys didn't do anything wrong to me, no need to apologize. Besides, it looks like I'll still be able to work here at the company. So let's keep up the good work together, I said to my colleagues, who were bowing their heads. As they looked up with relieved faces, I felt a sense of ease and my tension loosened. Having proven that I hadn't made a mistake, I safely returned home. When I told my wife and son that I was able to return to work, They were genuinely happy for me. A few days later, while I was still on my paid leave, my phone rang again. It was the company president. Sorry to bother you during your time off. Actually, I got a call from the president of our client company. They specifically asked to pass a message to you, he said. That's okay. What happened? I asked. Well, after the confusion with the order mistake, the client company contacted us. They remembered how diligently you had been handling our dealings with them and suspected there might have been some mistake. They couldn't believe it was your fault, the president explained. That's what happened. I mused as the memories of that time came back to me. I always knew we had a long-standing relationship with that client, but to think they had such a high regard for me was heartwarming. The president continued speaking. I always had a hunch it couldn't have been your mistake, but who would have thought Anderson was the one tampering with the records? I'm truly sorry about this whole situation. After the incident, we had a meeting with the upper management, and as a result, Anderson has been terminated for his misconduct. It was only appropriate, given the extent of what he did. Anderson's father, a high-ranking executive at our parent company, couldn't save him from being fired. According to the president, Anderson is now trying to find a job at another company, but his reputation for tampering with records is making it difficult. After hanging up the phone, I took a deep breath. Now I can get back to work as usual. With Anderson gone, it's time to put in even more effort. With Anderson gone, I'm even more motivated to work hard. Seeing my renewed enthusiasm, my wife chuckled. It seems like something good happened. The next day, we went to the amusement park as a family, a trip we had promised our son. We enjoyed the park, watching our son's happy face. Mom, Dad, we can reserve priority tickets here, he exclaimed. Wow, that's convenient. I replied. He explained a system allowing us to access attractions quickly within a specified time. Seeing how much my son had grown without my realizing filled me with warmth. We spent the whole day enjoying the amusement park. Then, the day to return to work arrived. I'm off, I said, leaving home earlier than usual. The familiar commute seemed brighter to me. Arriving at the office, I brushed off my suit and entered. Good morning, I greeted. Good morning, Mr. Jack. I'm sorry to ask so early, but could you handle this? A colleague asked, handing me an order form for Singapore. Of course, leave it to me. And so, my daily routine resumed as usual.
This story is titled, My Wife Cheated with Her Ex on Our Wedding Day, Thinking I Never Know. Now she's alone at the altar as I walked out. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, big news, I've launched a new Reddit channel. This time the background isn't Minecraft. It's Subway Surfers in a Christmas theme to match the season. Check it out, subscribe, and join the fun. Links in the description. See you there. Now let's start the video. Alright, so here's the deal. I'm Ryan, 30 years old, living in San Diego, and for the longest time I thought I had everything figured out. I was getting married to Sabrina, my girlfriend of 3 years, and honestly, life seemed pretty damn good. She was gorgeous, super outgoing, and could light up a room when she walked in. Everyone who met her would say things like, "Man, you're lucky," and I believed them. I mean, who wouldn't? On paper, she seemed perfect. We planned this big wedding. Like, I'm talking all out. Beachfront venue, fancy catering, a live band, you name it, we had it. It wasn't cheap, but I thought it was worth it. You only get married once, right? Well, at least that's what I thought at the time. But about a week before the wedding, Sabrina started acting different. At first, I brushed it off. Weddings are stressful, you know? Between the guest lists, the decorations, the seating charts. Yeah, it's a lot. But her behavior wasn't just stress. It was something else. She'd suddenly get super secretive with her phone, like always flipping it over when she set it down or stepping out of the room to take calls. I didn't really say anything at first because, honestly, I didn't want to come across as some paranoid fiancé. That's not me. Then one night she was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up and a name popped up. Jason. Now for a second I thought, who the hell is Jason? And then it hit me. It's her ex. Yeah, that Jason. The one she swore was out of her life ages ago. The message wasn't long. It just said, looking forward to tonight. That's it. And I'll admit, my stomach twisted a little. I mean, why was she making plans with her ex a few days before our wedding? But then I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she was helping him out with something. Sabrina's always been the type to help people. So I decided to just ask her. Later that night, when she was out of the shower and we were getting ready for bed, I said, "Hey, so Jason texted you earlier. What's that about?" She didn't even blink. "Oh, Jason. Yeah, he's just going through some stuff. I've been checking in on him. It's no big deal." She said it so casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And maybe it was. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. I didn't push, though. I figured I'd let it go for now. But after that, things started adding up. She'd tell me she was going to meet her maid of honor to go over wedding details, but wouldn't give me much info. She'd get super defensive if I asked too many questions, saying I was stressing her out or making things harder than they needed to be. And I'll admit, I started to wonder if I was overthinking things. Like, was I being that guy? The one who turns every little thing into a big deal? I didn't want to be that guy. Still, the phone thing kept bothering me. It wasn't just Jason. She'd get a ton of texts, and every time she'd immediately hide her phone or act like she didn't hear it. One time, I even joked, "What, you got a secret admirer or something?" She just laughed it off, but the way she avoided eye contact? Yeah, that stuck with me. Then came the night that really kicked things up a notch. Sabrina told me she was meeting her maid of honor, Grace, at a cafe to finalize some wedding stuff. It sounded normal enough, and I didn't think twice about it. I stayed home, watched some TV, and was just about to crash when my best man Eric called. "Yo, Ryan, are you busy?" he asked, sounding kind of hesitant. "No, what's up?" I replied, a little confused. He paused for a second. "Look, man, I don't know if I should say anything, but I'm at Shimon Bar right now, and I just saw Sabrina here." "Okay, and?" I said, not really understanding the problem. "She's not with Grace," Eric said slowly. "She's with some guy. And I'm pretty sure it's Jason." That caught my attention. "Jason? Like, her ex Jason?" "Yeah, man. They're sitting in a booth in the corner. It doesn't look like they're talking about centerpieces, if you know what I mean." For a moment, I didn't even know what to say. Sabrina was out with her ex at a bar when she told me she was meeting her friend? What the hell was going on? Eric must have sensed my silence because he added, "I'm sorry, dude. I thought you should know. I can send you a picture if you want." I told him to send it, and when it came through, my heart dropped. There she was, sitting way too close to Jason, her hand on his arm, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I thanked Eric and hung up. After Eric's call, I couldn't get the image of that photo out of my head. Sabrina and Jason sitting in that booth, way too close, way too comfortable. She wasn't just meeting up with an old friend. It looked intimate, and we both knew it. I stayed up half the night trying to figure out what the hell to do. Part of me wanted to storm down to the bar right then, but I knew that wasn't the move. I needed to see this for what it was and not let my emotions take over. The next day, Sabrina acted like nothing had happened. She was cheerful, humming some song while making coffee in the kitchen, like she wasn't out cozying up to her ex the night before. "Morning, babe," she said with that same bright smile that used to make me melt. Now, it just made me question everything. I played along. "Morning. How was your meeting with Grace?" She didn't even hesitate. "Oh, it was great. We went over some last-minute stuff for the seating chart. She's such a lifesaver, honestly." She sipped her coffee and started scrolling on her phone like it was just another day. It hit me then. She was a damn good liar. The way she spoke, the way she moved, it was all so natural, so confident. If Eric hadn't called me, I would have bought every word. That pissed me off more than anything. I didn't press her right then. I wanted to see how far she'd take the lie. So I asked, "Did you guys stay at the cafe the whole time? Seemed like you were out pretty late." "Oh yeah," she said casually. "We stayed there for a while, and then I dropped her off at her place. It was just a long night." "A long night, huh?" I nodded, biting my tongue to keep from saying something I'd regret. Later that day, I called Eric to get more details. "What else did you see?" "Did they leave together?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Nah, man. They were still there when I left," Eric said. "But they looked real comfortable. Like, if you didn't know she was engaged, you'd think they were together." That stung. I thanked him and hung up, but my head was spinning. I couldn't just let this slide, but I also didn't want to jump the gun. That evening, Sabrina told me she was going out again. Another wedding errand with Grace. This time, I wasn't letting it go. "Cool," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Where are you guys meeting?" "Just at her place," she said quickly, grabbing her purse. Something about the way she answered made me pause. "All right, say hi to her for me." She gave me a quick peck on the cheek and walked out the door. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my keys and called Eric. "I'm going to Shoreline," I told him. "Dude, are you sure? What if she's not even there this time?" "I have to know," I said. I parked a block away from the bar and walked in, trying to keep my cool. The place was crowded, the usual mix of college kids and locals. It took me a minute to spot her. But there she was, back in the same corner booth with Jason. They looked even more comfortable this time. She was leaning toward him, laughing at something he said, her hand resting on his. My stomach turned. This wasn't just some innocent conversation. I didn't confront her right then and there. They were in their own little bubble, completely oblivious to the world around them. It was like I didn't even exist. At one point, Jason leaned in close, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh, and lightly shove his shoulder. I clenched my fists under the counter, trying to keep myself in check. I stayed for about 20 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. I left without saying anything, drove home, and sat in my car for what felt like hours. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. We were getting married in a few days. How do you even begin to deal with something like this? By the time Sabrina came home, I'd calmed down enough to play it cool. She walked in, all smiles, and said, "Hey, Grace says hi, by the way." I nodded, barely looking up from my phone. "Oh, cool. Did you guys get everything figured out?" "Yep," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Just a few more things to finalize, and we're good to go." I couldn't believe how easily she lied. She didn't miss a beat. That night, I barely slept again. I kept replaying what I'd seen at the bar, trying to make sense of it. How did she dare cheating on me? The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I called Eric and told him everything. "Dude, you've got to talk to her," he said. "You can't just let this go. If she's doing this now, what's going to happen after you're married?" He was right, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more information, more proof, so I decided to wait and see what she'd do next. Over the next few days, Sabrina kept up the act. She'd smile, laugh, and talk about the wedding like nothing was wrong. But every time her phone buzzed, I felt my blood boil. I knew Jason was still in the picture, and I knew she wasn't being honest with me. By the time the rehearsal dinner rolled around, I was barely holding it together. Sabrina's family was all smiles, talking about how excited they were for the big day. My family, on the other hand, could tell something was off. My mom pulled me aside at one point and asked, "Are you okay? You seem distracted." "I'm fine," I lied, but I wasn't fine. I was furious, and I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. All right, so by this point, I was done sitting around and letting Sabrina play me. I was tired of the fake smiles, the lies, and her acting like everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I could see exactly what was happening. But now it was time for her to see that I wasn't someone she could keep stringing along. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I woke up feeling like today was the day I'd finally say something. I couldn't keep this bottled up anymore. She was still in bed when I got up, scrolling on her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. I stared at her for a moment, wondering if she even felt guilty for sneaking around with her ex. Did she think I wouldn't find out? Or did she just think I'd forgive her no matter what? Either way, she was about to find out she was dead wrong. "Hey," I said, my voice steady. "We need to talk." She looked up, slightly confused but not alarmed. "Sure. What's up?" I sat down across from her, keeping my eyes locked on hers. "Where were you the other night? And don't tell me you were with Grace because we both know that's not true." Her face froze for a split second before she forced a smile. "What do you mean?" "I told you, I was with Grace working on wedding stuff." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Cut the crap, Sabrina. Eric saw you. With Jason." Her jaw dropped slightly, and I could see the panic start to creep into her expression. "Wait, what? That's not true," she stammered. "Eric must have been mistaken." "Don't lie to me," I said firmly. "He wasn't mistaken. He even sent me a photo. You were sitting in a booth with Jason, laughing, touching his arm. So tell me, what the hell is going on?" She sat there for a moment, completely silent, as if she was trying to come up with some kind of excuse. Finally, she sighed and said, "Okay, fine. Yes, I saw Jason. But it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You've been sneaking around with your ex, lying to me about where you've been, and spending time at a bar with him instead of working on wedding plans. So tell me, Sabrina, what exactly is it?" She started to tear up, which I knew was her go-to move whenever she got caught doing something wrong. "Ryan, it's not like that," she said, her voice shaking. "Jason reached out to me a while ago. He's been going through a lot, and he just needed someone to talk to. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd overreact." "Overreact?" I said, my voice rising. "You're meeting up with your ex days before our wedding and lying to me about it, and you think I'm overreacting?" Her tears started to flow now, and she reached out to grab my hand. "Please, Ryan, you have to believe me. I love you. I don't have feelings for Jason. I was just trying to help him." I pulled my hand away, shaking my head. "You don't lie to someone you love, Sabrina. And you sure as hell don't sneak around with your ex behind their back. Do you even hear yourself right now?" She started to panic, realizing I wasn't buying her bullshit. "Ryan, please. It was a mistake, okay? I shouldn't have seen him. but it didn't mean anything. I swear I stood up, unable to sit there and listen to her try to spin this anymore. You don't accidentally meet up with someone multiple times, Sabrina. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. And honestly, it's pretty damn clear where your priorities are. She jumped up too, trying to block me from leaving the room. Wait, please don't walk away. We can fix this. I'll stop talking to him. I'll block his number. Just don't give up on us. I paused, staring at her for a moment. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that maybe this was just some stupid mistake she'd made in a moment of weakness. But the other part of me, the part that had been watching her lie straight to my face for weeks, knew better. How long has this been going on? I asked, my voice quieter now. She hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. A couple of weeks, she finally admitted. But it wasn't anything serious. We just talked, I swear. I let out a bitter laugh. Do you even hear yourself? You're supposed to be marrying me, and you're sneaking around with a guy you used to date, and you think I'm supposed to just believe it's no big deal? It wasn't like that, she insisted, her voice desperate now. I made a mistake, okay? But it's you I want to be with. Please don't let this ruin everything. I shook my head, stepping past her and heading for the door. Sabrina, you already ruined everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. I walked out, slamming the door behind me, and got in my car. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get out of there and clear my head. When I finally pulled over, I called Eric and told him what happened. Dude, she admitted to it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She's been seeing Jason for weeks. Ryan, I'm so sorry, man, Eric said. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I don't know yet. But I can't just let this slide. There's no way I'm marrying her now. Eric was quiet for a moment before he said, Look, whatever you decide, just know I've got your back. You don't deserve this, man. Hearing that meant a lot, but it didn't make the situation any easier. I knew I had some tough decisions to make, and I knew the fallout from this was going to be messy. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Sabrina or Jason make a fool out of me. I spent the rest of that day driving around aimlessly, trying to process everything. Sabrina wasn't just lying to me. She was living a completely different life behind my back. And the worst part? She had the audacity to keep acting like everything was fine. Like we were still the perfect couple everyone thought we were. When I finally got back to the apartment, she wasn't there. Good. The wedding was only 2 days away, and I knew I had to make a decision. Do I go through with it and hope this was just a stupid mistake? Or do I call it off and deal with the fallout? The thing is, calling off a wedding isn't just about you and the other person. It's about the guests, the families, the money you've already spent. It felt like an avalanche waiting to happen. But as much as I hated the idea of disappointing everyone, I hated the thought of marrying someone who didn't respect me even more. That night, Sabrina came home late, as usual. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, when she walked in. She looked surprised to see me there. Hey, she said, forcing a smile. You're up late. Yeah, I said, not looking at her. Couldn't sleep. She paused, probably sensing the tension in the room. Listen, about earlier, she started, but I cut her off. Save it, Sabrina. I don't want to hear it right now. My voice was calm, but firm. I wasn't in the mood for another round of her excuses. She stood there for a moment, then sighed and walked into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, staring into the darkness, trying to figure out how did the person I thought I was going to spend my life with turn out to be such a liar. It wasn't even just about Jason anymore. It was about trust. And once that's gone, what's left? The next morning, Sabrina acted like nothing had happened. She came out of the bedroom, already dressed and ready to tackle another day of wedding errands. She poured herself a cup of coffee and started scrolling on her phone, completely ignoring the elephant in the room. So, what's the plan for today? I asked, trying to sound casual. I wanted to see if she'd even bother to tell me the truth. She looked up, startled. Just some last-minute stuff with Grace, she said quickly. We're going to pick up the centerpieces and make sure the venue is set up the way we want it. I nodded, playing along. Sounds important. Need any help? She laughed nervously. No, we've got it covered. You just relax and get ready for the big day. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek before grabbing her bag and heading out the door. The second she was gone, I felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger because she was still lying to my face, and relief because I didn't have to deal with her for a few hours. Eric called me. Man, what's your plan? I paused, staring out the window. I don't know yet, but I'm not going to let her get away with this. She thinks she can just walk all over me and I'll still marry her? She's in for a rude awakening. Eric laughed. Now that sounds like the Ryan I know. Just let me know if you need backup. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day thinking about how to handle this. I wanted to confront her in front of everyone at the wedding, to expose her lies and make her feel the humiliation she deserved. This wasn't just about her. It was about me taking control of my life and refusing to settle for less than I deserved. When Sabrina came home that evening, she was all smiles again. "Everything's coming together perfectly," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "I think this is going to be the best day of our lives." I forced a smile, trying to hide my frustration. "That's great," I said. "I'm glad everything's working out." She came over and wrapped her arms around me, resting her head on my chest. "I love you, Ryan. I know things have been stressful lately, but I just want you to know how much I appreciate you." Her words felt hollow, like she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. I didn't say anything, just stood there until she let go and went to take a shower. As I sat there, I realized something. I didn't love her anymore. Or maybe I did, but not in the way I used to. The trust was gone. And without that, what was left? A pretty face? And a lot of broken promises? That wasn't enough for me. The night before the wedding, Sabrina was in the bedroom, probably dreaming about walking down the aisle while I was on the couch, thinking about how I was going to handle the next day. I knew I couldn't marry her, but I also knew I needed to make my decision clear in a way she couldn't ignore. By morning, I had a strange sense of calm. I wasn't nervous or angry anymore. I was just ready. Ready to stand up for myself, ready to put an end to this farce, and ready to walk away from someone who didn't deserve me. Sabrina was buzzing with excitement as we got ready to head to the venue. "Can you believe it? In a few hours, we're going to be husband and wife," she said, beaming. I forced another smile. "Yeah, hard to believe." She didn't notice the edge in my voice, too wrapped up in her own little world. But that was fine. She'd notice soon enough. I played along, answering questions when I needed to, nodding at her dad when he gave me his "don't screw this up" look, and shaking hands with guests as they arrived. It was like I was on autopilot. Inside, I was just waiting for the right moment. When I walked into the ceremony area, the setup was breathtaking. White chairs lined up in perfect rows, flowers everywhere, and the ocean as the backdrop. It looked like something straight out of a magazine. It should have felt special, but all I could think was, how much of this money did I just waste? Guests were slowly filing in, chatting and laughing, oblivious to the disaster brewing. My groomsmen were in place, all looking sharp in their suits. Eric gave me a nod, silently asking if I was okay. I nodded back. No turning back now. Sabrina's family was all smiles, greeting everyone, talking about how excited they were for the big moment. It made me sick. Her dad even came over and patted me on the shoulder. "You ready to officially join the family, son?" I forced a smile. "Absolutely," I said, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. The music started, and everyone took their seats. Sabrina's bridesmaids made their way down the aisle, looking like they were in some romantic movie. I barely noticed them. I was too focused on what I was about to do. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I was steady, ready. Then the music shifted to the classic wedding march, and everyone stood. Sabrina appeared at the end of the aisle, her arm hooked around her dad's. All I could see was a liar, a manipulator, someone who had no problem sneaking around with her ex while I was at home planning our future. It was like her appearance was a mask, hiding the person I now knew her to be. She finally made it to the altar, standing across from me with that big, radiant smile. Her dad gave me a firm handshake and whispered, "Take good care of her." I just nodded, too focused on what was about to happen. The officiant began his opening remarks, talking about love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage. I barely heard a word. I was waiting for my moment. He turned to me and asked the first question. "Ryan, do you take Sabrina to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I took a deep breath, looking Sabrina directly in the eye. Her smile faltered slightly as she noticed the look on my face. "I'm sorry," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "but I can't do this." The crowd gasped. A few people murmured, and Sabrina's smile disappeared entirely. What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I ignored her and turned to the guests. "I need to be honest with all of you," I said, my voice steady. "Sabrina hasn't been honest with me. For weeks now, she's been sneaking around with her ex, Jason. She lied to me, lied to her friends, and lied to all of you." The murmurs grew louder. Sabrina's mom looked like she was about to faint, while her dad's face turned beet red. The bridesmaids exchanged shocked glances, and my groomsmen just stood there, frozen. Eric, though, looked proud, like he'd been waiting for this moment almost as much as I had. Sabrina grabbed my arm, her eyes wide and full of tears. "Ryan, stop! Please don't do this. You're making a mistake." I pulled my arm away, looking at her like she was a stranger. "No, Sabrina. You made the mistake. You made it the moment you decided to see Jason behind my back. You made it every time you lied to my face. I deserve better than this." She started crying, full on sobbing now, but I wasn't moved. The crowd was dead silent, all eyes on us. It was like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Ryan, please, she begged, her voice breaking. I love you. I'll fix this. Just don't leave me. I shook my head. Love isn't sneaking around with your ex. Love isn't lying to the person you're supposed to spend your life with. If this is what you call love, I don't want it. She tried to grab my arm again, but I stepped back. You can cry all you want, Sabrina, but this is over. I'm done. I turned to the officiant, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Sorry for wasting your time, I said, before walking down the aisle past the stunned crowd. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The damage was done. As I walked out of the venue, I felt a strange sense of relief. Sure, I was leaving behind a mess, a really expensive mess, but it was worth it. I dodged a bullet, and I knew it. If she was willing to lie to me before we even got married, what would she do after? Back at my car, I sat for a moment, taking it all in. My phone was blowing up with texts and calls. Sabrina, her mom, even a couple of her bridesmaids. But I ignored them. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I'd said my piece. Eric was the first one to call, and I actually answered. Dude, that was badass, he said, laughing. You okay? Yeah, I said, finally allowing myself to smile. Better than I've been in weeks. You want me to grab some drinks and come over? I think you've earned it. Yeah, man. I'll see you in a bit. As I drove away from the venue, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Sure, I'd just blown up what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but it was better than living a lie. Sabrina would have to deal with the consequences of her actions, and I'd get to start fresh, knowing I made the right choice. When I got home, Eric showed up about 20 minutes later, a six-pack in hand. Man, he said, walking through the door. That was insane. You really pulled the plug in front of everyone, huh? I nodded, slumping onto the couch. Had to. She left me no choice. Eric cracked open a can and handed it to me. You should have seen their faces. Her dad looked like he was about to charge the altar. And her bridesmaids? They were whispering to each other the whole time like it was a reality show. I smirked. Good. Let them talk. She earned it. The voicemails were exactly what I expected. Sabrina's voice was shaky and desperate, alternating between apologies and excuses. Ryan, please call me back. We can fix this. I know I messed up, but we can work through it. Her mom's message was more aggressive. Ryan, how dare you humiliate my daughter like that? You couldn't have handled this in private? You owe her an apology. I rolled my eyes and deleted the messages without even finishing them. I didn't owe anyone an apology. If anything, Sabrina owed me one, for wasting my time, for lying, for thinking she could get away with it. A few days passed, and the fallout started spreading. Word got around quickly, especially after Eric shared the photo he took of Sabrina and Jason at the bar with a few mutual friends. I didn't ask him to, but I wasn't mad about it either. People deserve to know the truth, especially after Sabrina's mom started spinning the story like I was the bad guy. Apparently, Sabrina's version of events was that I'd snapped under wedding pressure and left her at the altar because I couldn't handle the stress. That didn't sit well with me, but I didn't have to say much to set the record straight. The photo of her and Jason said it all. Once people saw that, her excuses fell apart. One of her bridesmaids, Lauren, even reached out to me. Ryan, I'm so sorry, she said over the phone. I had no idea she was doing that to you. If I'd known, I would have said something. It's fine, I said, not really wanting to get into it. I'm just glad it's over. But Lauren wasn't done. Honestly, Sabrina's been acting sketchy for weeks. Grace and I noticed she'd disappear a lot during wedding stuff, but she'd always say it was just personal errands. I feel bad now for not questioning it. Don't. It's not your fault, I said, and I meant it. I wasn't going to waste time being mad at anyone but Sabrina. As for Jason, well, his involvement didn't last long. Apparently, after the wedding disaster, Sabrina tried to lean on him for support. Big surprise. He wasn't interested. He'd been all smiles and charm when they were sneaking around behind my back, but the moment things got real, he ghosted her. A mutual friend told me he blocked her on social media and stopped answering her calls. Classy guy. Sabrina tried reaching out to me again, this time through texts. Her messages were full of emotions, apologies, accusations, and desperate pleas. One text would say, I'm so sorry, Ryan. I know I messed up, but I love you and I want to make this right. The next would say, you're being so unfair. Everyone thinks I'm a monster now because of you. I ignored every single one. What was the point? She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. Big difference. A week after the wedding, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I wasn't surprised. It felt like something she'd do. I opened the door, and there she was, looking like a mess. Her hair was tied back in a sloppy bun, and her eyes were puffy like she'd been crying for hours. Ryan, please, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. What do you want, Sabrina? She hesitated, like she wasn't sure how to start. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I screwed up. But I want to fix this. I stared at her, not saying anything. Let her squirm a little. I'll do whatever it takes, she continued, her voice breaking. I'll block Jason. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance. I shook my head slowly. Sabrina, you don't get it, do you? This isn't about blocking Jason or going to therapy. It's about trust. And you destroyed that. There's no coming back from this. She stood there, silent, her tears falling harder. I felt a small pang of pity for her, but it wasn't enough to change my mind. Go home, Sabrina, I said, stepping back into the apartment. And don't come back. Before she could say anything else, I closed the door and locked it. As the weeks went on, Sabrina's attempts to contact me slowed down. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Word got around about what happened, and people started distancing themselves from her. Even her closest friends started to see her for who she really was. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Walking away from Sabrina was the best decision I ever made. She showed me exactly who she was, and I believed her. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that you should never settle for less than you deserve. Life's too short for that. And Sabrina? Well, last I heard, she's still single. Jason didn't stick around, and her friends don't trust her anymore. I guess she's got plenty of time now to think about the choices she made. Me? I'm just glad I walked away. Best decision of my life.
It's like you're not wanted here. You should go. Even though my brother said mean things to me, my sister-in-law sitting next to me quietly squinted her eyes and smiled, enjoying my surprised face. When I looked at our mother, who I lived with for a long time, she sadly said, "Living with your brother and his wife, who went to a really good university and works at a top company, seems better than living with you, Linda. You always stay inside the house," she said calmly. My mother, sister-in-law, and brother didn't seem to realize how much I've helped with money and worked for our family. Even though it hurt, I said, "Okay, I'll go. Don't ask me for help again," and started packing my things. She watched me and sarcastically said with a smug smile, "Giving up so easily, Linda? But nobody knows who will have a harder time in the future. Ignoring this could cause problems. My name's Linda, and I've done really well with online businesses. My journey here was unexpected. Back in university, I thought I'd end up with a regular job at a typical company, but something changed everything during my second year. My dad got sick and needed someone to take care of him every day. My mom wasn't great at housework, so we hired caregivers. But they couldn't be there all the time, so my mom had to step in. Sometimes she ignored my dad's needs, telling him to wait. I had to help him out whenever this happened. Seeing this made me worry about the future. When I start working, who will take care of my dad? I couldn't rely on my mom alone. So I started looking into ways to make money from home. I studied online business stuff during university, using what I learned in economics. I teamed up with friends who knew about management and economics, and then with others who were good with computers. That's how we started our online business project. We had a nice office where staff could work if they found it hard to concentrate at home, or for new employees to learn the ropes. But personally, I hardly ever went there. My main workspace is at home, where I can be with my dad. I do most of my work there. One day, my dad asked me if I gave up on a full-time job for him, or if it was hard to find one after graduating. It made me emotional, but I explained how I've been running my online business since college. It's doing well, and I can work from home without any problems. My dad was proud of me and grateful for what I do. He said I've become a responsible adult, which meant a lot to me. I'm actually not the only child responsible for taking care of my father. I have an older brother named Tom, who's 2 years older than me. Tom tends to be selfish and doesn't often think about others. He's always been really smart and did great in school. After he graduated from a top university, he easily got a job at a really good company. When we found out about his job, we were surprised but happy for him. We all tried to reach out to congratulate him, but his response wasn't what we expected. He said he was starting a new life in the city and didn't plan to come back home. He wanted us to believe he was doing well on his own. Then he hung up the phone abruptly. Since that day, we couldn't get in touch with Tom at all. He cut off all communication with us, ignoring our calls and messages. Even though our dad had supported him financially through college and living on his own, Tom never seemed grateful and distanced himself from us. Both my dad and I felt shocked and disappointed by his behavior. We started to wonder if our mom was secretly talking to Tom. But even with Dad's health getting worse and needing care every day, Tom's complete silence showed he didn't care about his responsibilities as part of the family. Then one day we got some unexpected news from Mom. Tom called me out of the blue. He said he's thinking of marrying someone and asked if we could give them a wedding gift. He wants $99,000. Mom told Dad and me about this, looking a bit worried because of our finances. Mom mostly stays home except for her part-time job 3 days a week. She usually spends her salary on lunch and shopping with friends, so she doesn't save much. I was surprised that Mom wanted to give Tom so much money, especially since we hadn't heard from him in a long time. Dad was first calm but then got really mad. Why should we give him all that money when he hasn't even talked to us since he left home? He was upset with Mom, who looked unhappy and glanced at me for support. Mom tried to explain, but think about it, Tom's getting married. I want him to have a good life and maybe even give us grandchildren. It's what parents want. Please understand, she said calmly. The main reason I didn't go for a regular job was because of Mom, so it hurt to hear her say those things. Dad was also upset with Mom. Linda stays home to take care of me because you didn't help enough. I've supported Tom a lot, but he's never thanked me. How can you ask for such a big gift for him? That day, there were loud arguments between Mom and Dad. I listened from the next room, worried about Dad's health. Mom always favored my brother and praised him, but she didn't understand why I stayed home to care for Dad. It made me really sad. After Mom left to go out for dinner, Dad said to me, "Linda, thank you for always being here for me." "It's okay, Dad. I've known for a long time that Mom favors Tom. I'm used to it. I know I've asked a lot of you. I wish I could do more to help you. Dad, you've done so much for me. You've supported my education and always encouraged me. If it wasn't for you, I might not have started my online business." My father's smile brought me some comfort, but I couldn't understand why Mom, who had such a caring father, acted so selfishly. And my brother, who hadn't talked to us for years, suddenly asking for a big wedding gift was hard to swallow. But the most shocking thing happened shortly after. One morning, I found my father wasn't moving. I called an ambulance, but it was too late. He had passed away. Many people came to his funeral to pay their respects, showing how lucky he was. Normally, the wife would arrange the funeral, but Mom said she was too busy and left it all to me. She was always on her phone, seeming more concerned about that than about Dad's passing. I felt angry and unsupported. I focused on arranging the funeral to give Dad a proper send-off. Then something surprising happened. My brother showed up at the funeral with a woman in a flashy dress. He was dressed casually, which wasn't right for the occasion. Everyone was shocked, but Mom greeted him with a smile. "I'm glad you're here, Tom. Now your father's inheritance will be ours," Mom boldly stated. The atmosphere in the hall changed completely after Mom's sudden statement. Everyone was shocked and confused. Honestly, I don't think Linda should expect any inheritance. She's been at home taking care of Dad, Tom said loudly with a hint of sarcasm. I was surprised and sighed deeply. He must have known about our family situation and Dad's health from Mom. But Mom seemed to ignore the fact that I contributed a lot to our family's finances and whether there was actually any inheritance from Dad, who needed care. Dad used to have a good job, but making such comments at a funeral was disrespectful. The funeral felt gloomy and tense. "Should we leave now, Tom? We'll get the inheritance anyway," Mom said, pulling on his arm. As soon as I saw the woman with my brother, I knew she was his wife. She had a similar vibe to Tom, and I figured she must have a personality like his to marry him. I wished they would leave soon. Surprisingly, even Mom seemed to agree with them. "Shall we go get sushi?" she said, and the three of them left. Other relatives were also surprised. Some spoke out in shock, but I suggested, "Let's stay composed for Dad's sake." I kept my irritation to myself and carried on with the funeral. Returning home, I found a messy dining table with 3 boxes of sushi, likely ordered for delivery. From the living room came the sound of voices and laughter. Mom, Tom, and his wife Jessica were having a good time, drinking. "Hey, you're late, Linda. Can you make some snacks and grab more alcohol?" my brother asked. I was shocked by their insensitivity, especially during Dad's funeral. It seemed they didn't realize their behavior was wrong, even with the shocked looks from other relatives. Mom, who should have corrected them, was joining in their laughter, making me feel justified in staying. I wondered if they would have even bothered with a proper funeral if I wasn't there. So I told them, There's no inheritance for you. I refused to get more drinks or snacks for them. Tom, now drunk, got upset. What do you mean, Linda? You've always been at home, causing trouble for Dad. It's only fair we use his assets. Considering that Tom relied on Dad for all his college expenses, I couldn't understand why he felt entitled to Dad's assets. It frustrated me to see him act like he didn't owe Dad anything. Isn't this house Dad's? Tom asked. As the eldest son, it should be mine. Why is Linda, who does nothing all day, living here? Mom and Tom seemed to agree. The warmth Mom used to have for me was gone. This house is mine, Tom said firmly. I want Linda out. His wife didn't seem bothered by this. Mom spoke next. I feel more comfortable living with my son and his wife, who have done well in life, than with you, Linda. They didn't realize how much I contributed to the house. I felt sad and disappointed. I sighed and decided to speak up. I'll leave. Please don't ask anything of me anymore. As I packed my things in my room, I heard my sister-in-law mocking me. She's really poor, don't you think? They all laughed at me, but I just smiled bitterly to myself. Yes, right now, I might seem like the most miserable one. But there's something they don't know. This house has been legally mine since Dad was alive. He entrusted it to me. Even though Mom still lives here and might say she spent most of her life here, legally, it's mine. However, seeing her cold behavior during Dad's funeral made me think about what to do with the house. I felt tired of our relationship and saw her presence as a burden. Living alone in this big house would be lonely, and maintaining it would be hard, so I decided to sell it. Seeing Mom and my brother's family enjoying my situation without knowing my decision made me feel pity for them. Expecting inheritance from Dad seems ridiculous to me. Before my mom got sick, she had a stable income. But when her health declined, she couldn't work anymore. So she used her savings to hire someone to help her every day. She spent her savings on daily expenses, and even when Dad got sick and needed more care, Mom kept spending like usual, so her savings dwindled. When I realized Dad's savings were gone, I started giving $3,000 each month to help with household expenses. Mom did the housework but wasn't good at managing money. When Mom went shopping, she often bought expensive things impulsively, even if we didn't need them. She didn't pay attention to sales or budgeting. She used the money she earned from her part-time job for her hobbies and fun stuff. She also took more money than needed for daily expenses to enjoy herself. Dad felt bad about it. In the end, the money he saved was spent by Mom. As I prepared to leave the house, I withdrew all the money I had been giving for household expenses. I couldn't bear to let my mom keep using it. The next day, something unexpected happened. Did you take the household money, Linda? Mom's voice came through the phone one quiet morning. She sounded surprised and a bit upset. Mom, what household money? Dad's savings. Those were all gone when I checked. Did you forget that you used them up? I left the ledger on the table. It shows how you kept taking money from Dad's savings. Dad knew about it too. After his savings ran out, I was the one giving $3,000 every month to support the house. I heard Mom rushing around, probably looking for the ledger I mentioned. Then I heard the living room door open. Mom, what's going on? Wasn't there supposed to be inheritance after Dad passed? Did you use it all? My brother sounded angry and disappointed. His wife's voice echoed in the background. I can't believe this, Mom. Did you really call us back home expecting us to support you financially? That's really harsh. No, that's not what I meant. It was clear Mom had called them back because of the inheritance. Hearing this, I knew they wouldn't trust her anymore. We left our stable jobs to come here, expecting to get Dad's inheritance. How are we supposed to live now? What, Tom? I didn't know you made such a big decision. This was all news to me too. My brother used to have a good job, but I wasn't really bothered by their decision because it didn't affect me directly. And what about the $2,700 you've been getting every month? My brother asked. Mom, you kept saying Linda wasn't working, right? Mom suddenly looked at me with shock and guilt. What? Linda? What's going on? She asked. I smiled a little and said, you should look into remote work. These days, you can have a job without leaving home. I never told them about my successful online business. I knew if they knew, they'd start relying on me. Worse, they might interfere with my business. Please come back. Let's be a family again. Mom's voice was small, as if she hadn't blamed me at all. But I had no intention of going back. Mom, you just want to rely on my money, right? And about the house. While Dad was alive, I took over ownership because of the property taxes. It's mine now. I don't plan to live there anymore, so I asked my uncle, who runs a real estate agency, to sell it. He was really mad about what happened at Dad's funeral, so if my brother and his family stay there, he'll kick them out. Losing our home was something I never imagined. Mom sounded shocked, and I could hear my brother's voice on the phone asking, "What's going on?" Feeling too overwhelmed to answer my brother's question, I decided to leave everything to Uncle. He promised to handle things and explain everything to Mom and my brother's family, so I trusted him. "Goodbye, I'm cutting ties with you and Mom. I won't be using this phone anymore. Farewell." With that, I ended the call. I imagined their surprise and felt a brief sadness. It would be hard for them to find me. I had plans to move abroad, a dream I never shared, not even with Dad. I always wanted to live in a warm, tropical country with a diverse culture. When Mom and my brother's family asked me to leave the house after Dad died, I saw it as the perfect chance to make my dream come true. After being evicted from the house, I immediately started packing and searching for a place abroad. I wanted somewhere quiet near the beach, so I focused on finding the perfect spot. Now I'm living alone in a short-term rental apartment close to the city center with good transportation links, which is great for getting ready for my move abroad. With my brother, his wife, and Mom busy looking for a new place to live after the eviction, they probably haven't had time to think about me. By the time I heard they were cramped in a small apartment, taking up part-time jobs to get by, I was already settling into my new life abroad. My uncle hired a detective agency to discreetly monitor them. They found out my family was struggling financially, still spending beyond their means and even borrowing money from risky lenders. If things continue like this, they might face even more trouble with debt collectors. I've cut ties with them and avoided getting involved. It's unlikely I'll ever see them again after everything that's happened. So there's this moment where Jessica suddenly realizes something about her sister. She thinks her sister is kind of sad and unlucky, and then she gets this idea. What's the idea? Well, just wait and see. Jessica, wearing a fancy wedding dress, starts talking to everyone around. She even grabs a microphone. Then she says loudly to all the guests, "Does anyone want to marry my sister? She's not super smart, and she's getting older, you know?" After saying this, Jessica's sister gives her a sneaky smile. But she doesn't realize how rude Jessica's words are. The room suddenly feels weird, and people start whispering. Some of them look at Jessica with disapproval, but Jessica doesn't notice any of this. She grabs the microphone again and tells her sister, "Come on, you have to make yourself sound better. There are lots of good-looking doctors here. Don't you get what you've done wrong?" Suddenly, something big happened. A woman named Emily Nichols, who's 29 years old and works a regular job, spoke up. She's not particularly striking in looks, just ordinary. But she has one interesting thing about her. She became a lawyer after finishing middle school. Emily has a sister named Jessica, who's 2 years younger. Jessica is pretty and outgoing, so their family always favored her. Emily, unlike Jessica, isn't noticed much. She's just average in looks and style. Plus, she's not very charming, so she didn't get much love from her family or relatives. At home, she felt ignored and often got treated coldly. She couldn't compete with Jessica's natural charm, which got all the attention from their parents. Instead of love, Emily got harsh treatment. I tried really hard in school, hoping my family would notice me even just a little bit. But no matter how well I did, I could never beat my sister. Eventually, I got tired of trying so hard to be loved by my family. I decided to focus on something else instead of seeking their affection. I threw myself into studying, telling myself I'd find my own value. Studying hard made me feel more sure of myself, and I started to see good results. I hoped that one day my parents would praise me for my academic achievements, so I kept studying late into the night during middle school. I always got the highest grades in my class and did better than everyone else in tests. But my parents never praised me. Instead, they seemed disappointed if I didn't get almost perfect scores in every subject. They'd say things like, "Being at the top isn't enough. You need to be perfect in everything." Even if I got a 95% in a tough test, they'd still say it wasn't good enough. My mom's voice was like ice, sharp and cold. She always had something to say about my grades, making excuses feel useless. "Are you trying to show off these less than perfect grades?" she'd say, making me feel small. All I could do was mumble an apology. Yes, I'm sorry, I'd say quietly. No matter how hard I tried, my grades never seemed good enough for my parents. They never appreciated my efforts. If I didn't get a perfect score, they'd scold me. But what hurt more than their coldness was when my sister Jessica said seemingly innocent things. "Oh, are you getting in trouble again?" she'd say, barging into my room and smirking at my report card. Getting scolded even with good grades? That's sad. I get praise even for barely passing. Then she'd pretend to be concerned, saying, "I thought you were feeling down." But I guess I was wrong. "If you were really worried, you wouldn't talk to me like that." "That was my report card," I said. "See, that's your problem. You're always so standoffish. That's why Mom and Dad don't show you love. It's because of that," Jessica replied, her eyes cold and full of contempt. Even as she walked away, I could still feel her disdain. After she left, I heard her cheerful laughter with our parents from the living room. I should have been used to this by now, but I couldn't stop the sadness that welled up inside me. Tears streamed down my face. In my hand was my report card, now crumpled from my tight grip. I made a new resolve to stand on my own and escape this suffocating family environment. I decided that excelling in my studies and improving my abilities was the key to my freedom. From that moment on, I promised myself I would make it happen. I threw myself into my studies with even more determination than before. One day, as the autumn breeze blew through the classroom windows, my father made an unexpected announcement. "Emily, you will not go to high school. You need to start looking for a job immediately," he said coldly. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. "Why would you say that?" I asked, trying to hide my confusion. My father replied, "It's not worth investing more in you. If you want to go to high school, you'll have to pay for it yourself. If you can't do that, you'll have to give up." "But I'm still in middle school. I can't get a job that pays enough. How am I supposed to?" I tried to argue, but he wouldn't listen. "Then you'll just have to accept it. Your mother and I have decided to focus our finances on Jessica. We can't afford to spend more on you," he said firmly. "That's not fair." I screamed internally, but my father's decision was final. His harsh words seemed to drain all the color from my world, turning everything gray. My mother and sister watched me with unhidden smiles, clearly pleased. Now, I understand there were options to cover high school expenses, like finding schools with tuition waivers or scholarships. But back then, I didn't know about these options, and I felt devastated by the end of my educational path. From that day, my passion for learning faded quickly. The praise from my homeroom teacher, who admired my grades, felt empty. With no support for my education at home, my hopes of continuing my studies seemed impossible. After middle school, I started working at a local factory. I wasn't old enough to live on my own, so I worked hard until I turned 18. Most of my salary went to the household, and I saved the small amount I kept for myself. Those days were tough, like crawling through an endless tunnel. On my 18th birthday, I finally left that house. I left a single letter for my family and, with a firm decision in my heart, walked away from the home that was now just a memory. After I left, it was as if I never existed to my family. They didn't call or write. At first, living away from them was painful, and I felt very lonely. But over time, work kept me busy, and the loneliness faded. Living independently, the stress from home disappeared, and I felt a new sense of mental freedom. This peace of mind reignited my enthusiasm. I regained my love for learning and decided to start studying again. I began with the basics, reviewing diligently. The joy of learning filled my heart once more, and soon I was studying with ease. I moved on to high school textbooks and started reading extensively. During my reading journey, I became fascinated by books on law, which sparked a deep interest in the legal profession. Although I had only finished junior high, the idea of becoming a lawyer seemed far-fetched. But then I learned about the preliminary examination system, which opened up new possibilities for me. This system offered a chance for someone with my educational background to take the bar exam. Armed with this new information, I intensified my dedication to studying. I used every possible moment at home and during breaks at work to memorize legal terms. During lunch, I would eat while studying for the bar exam. My workplace was full of older colleagues, most around my parents' age. They noticed my efforts and came together to support me. At the age of 23, I passed the bar exam. After that, I left my long-term job at the factory and got a position at a top law firm. After about 4 years of training there, I opened my own law practice. Now, I am a legal consultant for a hospital and I feel content. Yet sometimes, I wonder how my parents would react if they knew I became a lawyer. I think about whether I would finally meet their expectations. Despite this, I have not shared anything with them. In my heart, I believe I will continue not to reach out to them. However, an unexpected reunion with my family came sooner than I anticipated. One evening after work, I came home to find a message on my phone from my younger sister Jessica saying she was getting married. Jessica is getting married, I murmured to myself. My sister, now 27, was engaged to a doctor. The notification said her wedding was next month, and they wanted me to attend. Despite the long period of estrangement from Jessica and my parents, I hesitated to meet them. But as a family member, I couldn't ignore the significant event. So I replied that I would attend. My sister quickly responded with the exact date and location of the ceremony. Her message ended with, "Don't forget the wedding gift," which made me smile wryly. It seemed Jessica was more interested in the gift than in wholeheartedly welcoming me. I decided to use the wedding as an opportunity to reunite with the family and then part ways again. On the day of Jessica's wedding, I, Donna, carefully chose a blue dress and headed to the venue. After completing the entrance formalities, I took my seat in the family area where my father and mother were already seated. "You have some nerve showing up here. You must be doing well for yourself with the meager earnings from the factory," my father said coldly. "Indeed, you're right. Introducing someone like her as family does not do us any credit as parents," my mother added disdainfully. "Jessica shouldn't have invited someone like you," my father continued. I told them exactly that, but they insisted on receiving the celebration money regardless, my mother said quietly, right in front of me. They continued their conversation without hesitation, ignoring my presence. This was my reality. I had a faint hope that sharing my side of the story might bridge the gap between my family and me, but it was quickly shattered. Both my father and mother avoided talking to me completely. In the silence, I glanced around the venue and noticed some familiar faces on the groom's side. Haven't I seen that person somewhere before? I wondered, feeling a sense of déjà vu. As I tried to remember, I looked up the groom's name, and my suspicion turned into certainty. The connection I had anticipated became clear, and I couldn't entirely hide my surprise. It felt like a twist of fate. However, I decided to keep my emotions in check and quietly participate in the ceremony. As the program proceeded, the bride and groom made a glamorous entrance, followed by his team. Guests offered warm words and entertaining performances, softening the atmosphere. Time passed, and the banquet gradually shifted to dinner and then to photo-taking sessions. Throughout this time, my parents got up without acknowledging my presence and moved towards the front where the bride and groom awaited. Jessica, like a magnet, clung close to them, smiling happily in each photograph taken. I pretended not to feel anything and focused silently on the meal in front of me. But unexpectedly, my sister Jessica approached me. She came closer with a smile, but her eyes had a spark of something more than excitement to see her sister after so many years. It seemed like she had an ulterior motive. "Big sis, it's been such a long time, hasn't it? Are you happy to spend time together like this?" she asked lightly. I nodded quietly, expressing my genuine thoughts. "Yes, the banquet food is really wonderful," I replied with a sarcastic smile. Jessica continued, "You can't get such luxurious food at the factory you work at, can you? You should be grateful for this opportunity." Something inside me felt like it was being torn apart, but I didn't show it on my face. Jessica's words grew sharper, cutting into me with a taunting edge. "Oh dear, did I upset you? I'm sorry, but it's natural for you to be envious, isn't it? Your little sister marrying a doctor and all." The phrase "I'm sorry" slipped from her mouth flippantly, as if it were a meaningless ornament. I kept my expression unchanged and quietly waited for her next move. Then Jessica whispered in my ear, "Big sis, because I feel sorry for you, I've come up with a great idea." Despite maintaining my composure, I asked with suspicion, "A great idea? What is it?" Jessica replied with satisfaction, "You'll see, just watch closely." Adorned in her elegant wedding dress, she gathered the attention of everyone around as she received a microphone from the staff. Suddenly, she announced loudly to the guests, "Ladies and gentlemen, you may not be aware, but my sister is here. She may not have the highest education or be the youngest, but if there is anyone kind-hearted enough, could you please take her under your wing?" My face turned red in an instant. "What are you saying, Jessica? I exclaimed, unable to hide my shock and embarrassment. I exclaimed, Jessica continued even louder. Although she doesn't earn much and leads a modest life, is there someone here who can brighten my sister's future? As everyone's attention focused on me, Jessica seemed to be relishing my confusion, sporting a smug smile. Then, something unbelievable happened. Jessica's disrespectful behavior escalated, and shockingly, even our usually gentle parents joined in. Please treat her kindly. Their careless comment was the last straw for me. Rage surged inside me. How far will they go to satisfy their desire to ridicule someone? Especially at a moment of happiness? I couldn't believe it, but it was time for them to face reality. As the atmosphere in the venue shifted and murmurs grew, Jessica, unaware she was once again the center of attention, cheerfully took the microphone, calling out, Emily, look, there are so many doctors gathered here. It's your chance. I remained silent, but my solemn gaze conveyed a strong will. This is the end for you, I thought. Jessica, confused, could only respond with, heh. I approached her calmly, saying, you'll understand soon just how terrible your actions have been. As Jessica tried to make an excuse, the groom suddenly raised his voice to address the venue. Wait, please. Why are you leaving your seats? His voice captivated everyone. Looking towards him, it was clear that all his colleagues from work were standing up, heading for the exit. Even as the groom tried to stop them, a dignified man who seemed to be the hospital director spoke to him firmly. The recent remarks of the bride were so unpleasant that I'm in disbelief. I apologize, but we can no longer stay here. We will take our leave now. The groom rushed to stop the hospital director, offering to take responsibility for Jessica's words and actions. Please wait, I admit her words were inappropriate. I'll speak to her directly and ensure she undergoes a serious change in awareness. However, the hospital director explained the seriousness of the situation and revealed information about me that the groom was unaware of. The problem isn't just that. Do you know what kind of person her sister is? The groom, confused, admitted he knew nothing about me. Eh? No, I only met her sister for the first time today, and all I've heard was that she worked in a factory after graduating from middle school. The hospital director couldn't hide his irritation at the groom's ignorance. Don't be ridiculous. Her sister is a respected lawyer and also serves as the legal advisor to our hospital. The groom was shocked to learn this, indicating he had no idea I was the hospital's legal advisor. The lawyer is our hospital's advisor. Not only the groom but also my sister, parents, and other guests were left speechless. I was contracted as the legal advisor to that hospital, which was where my sister's future husband worked. The reason the groom looked familiar was because I had seen him several times at hospital events. Other guests likely realized this too when they saw me. My sister's inappropriate comments only made things worse, prompting the hospital director to openly express his outrage. Although the groom himself is a member of the hospital's medical staff and has no direct relation to me, to the hospital director and other staff, the legal advisor is of significant importance. The groom's face turned even redder, and he stepped toward his sister, raising his voice in reproach. What on earth is this? Because of your carelessness, my reputation is now tarnished. The groom reproached Jessica, his tone filled with indignation. Jessica stumbled over her words for a moment, then defended herself like a bewildered child. It's not like that. I truly had no idea that my sister was in such a prestigious position. Growing more indignant, the groom continued to chastise Jessica for her ignorance. Ignorance is no excuse. And how can you speak so lightly and disrespectfully of your own sister? As a human being, your behavior is at the very bottom. You've truly lost sight of what's valuable. Desperately trying to elicit some understanding, Jessica pleaded, wait a minute, listen. I have a good reason. However, the groom, unwilling to hear her explanation, declared decisively, the withdrawal from the marriage itself. I have no interest in hearing your excuses. Our marriage discussion ends here. Shocked by his words, Jessica collapsed on the spot as if her soul had left her, her complexion turning deathly pale. Then, in a fit of anger, the groom and the guests disappeared from the wedding hall. As I was about to leave, I heard a desperate cry from my sister behind me. Please help me, Emily. But I didn't let her cries sway me. Confronting her with a stern tone, I said, help you say. Why should I do such a thing for you? The situation you're in now is the result of your own actions. Trying to get a laugh with a joke that mocks others and then playing the victim when it fails is pathetic. I can't accept it. Jessica, confused and anxious, pleaded. Why are you being so harsh? If you had known about my success as a lawyer, I replied calmly but firmly, why didn't you bother to contact me? In fact, I was planning to end our relationship after this wedding. But seeing your unfortunate end, I'm somewhat satisfied. You must be disappointed that your engagement to a doctor has been called off. Well, you better work hard to find your next prospect. With those words, I left the venue with dignity. From afar, I could hear the critical voices of my sister and parents. Everything went as expected, and my sister's marriage was no more. The parents, who had believed a secure future was guaranteed through my sister marrying a doctor, expressed their anger towards her for the first time. Amidst the chaos, my sister, always pampered, couldn't bear their anger and sought solace with a broken heart. But I turned a blind eye to her pleas, devoid of sympathy. I never answered her calls, despite her repeated attempts, and I cut off all contact with the family. I heard that my sister had quit her job, now unemployed, estranged from our parents, and spending her days isolated at home. As for me, I am enjoying a very satisfying life both professionally and personally, leading a peaceful existence without major problems. Although my relationship with my family has been rocky, I am grateful for the strong support I receive from colleagues and friends. This contented life isn't just luck, it's the result of years of self-improvement and hard work. There were challenging days, but overcoming each obstacle has brought me to where I am today. Reflecting on my past struggles and their impact on my growth, I aspire to continue living a fulfilling life at my own pace, setting achievable goals while minimizing stress. My full name is Rebecca Smith. I'm 32 years old, and I married my husband, Michael, about 3 years ago in the spring. Our relationship is great, and we are also very close to his sister, Emily. We get along like sisters. This story involves a man named Daniel, who later married Emily. Michael and I have been together for over 10 years, even before we got married, so we are like parents to Emily. We always wished for her happiness and took care of her. Because of this, when Emily got a marriage proposal from her fiancé, she wanted to introduce him to us, her second parents. I want to introduce my fiancé to you both, she told us. That moment was very special for us as a couple. We felt so happy because Emily, whom we love like a daughter, was finding her partner and working towards a happy future. It was a joyful moment for both me and Michael, and our hearts were full of happiness. Finally, the day came. Emily brought Daniel, her chosen partner, to meet us. Daniel seemed to be around my age, maybe 32. He was 5 years older than Emily, which made me realize she likes older men. I watched him quietly and was impressed by his solid appearance and calm attitude. However, I noticed Daniel kept glancing at me. Did he want to say something to me? Was there something about me that bothered him? Or was it just a coincidence? These questions popped into my mind. I quickly checked my clothes and hairstyle for any issues, but found nothing wrong. Maybe realizing it was rude to stare, Daniel quickly looked away. In the end, we couldn't understand why he was watching me so closely, but Michael and I decided not to worry about it. We went on to introduce ourselves and started chatting with Emily and Daniel, who were sitting across the table from us. "Please take good care of my younger sister," was a classic phrase exchanged, and Michael responded with a smile, "Emily, I'm trusting you to him." Saying this, he'd entrusted Emily's future happiness to Daniel. This created a warm and friendly atmosphere at the gathering, easing the initial tension of our first meeting. At one point, Michael asked Daniel a question he was curious about. "Daniel, may I ask where you work?" I was very interested in his answer and listened carefully. Daniel answered proudly, puffing out his chest. "You might have heard of it. I work at TE Company, which is growing very rapidly right now." "TE Company? Is that the famous game development company?" "Yes, that's correct. I actually started working at TE Company last year, but I didn't leave my old job because I didn't like it. TE Company approached me directly because they valued my skills highly, so it's like a promotion for me. Don't worry, I didn't start as a regular employee." Hearing this surprising story, both Michael and I were amazed. I couldn't help but widen my eyes, and our gazes met. Seeing our shocked reactions, Daniel seemed satisfied that he had made an impression, and he spoke with even more pride. "That's why I want you to trust me completely with Emily. I'm climbing the career ladder quickly at TE Company, and I'm confident that I'm progressing faster than most. Even though I started at a regular level, my salary will increase rapidly and I'll move up in the company quickly, so please don't worry. When I heard what Daniel said, I was so surprised that I couldn't speak. Tea company is super famous and I know a lot about it. Michael probably knows about it too. But since he doesn't work there, he might not know all the details. I think both Emily and Michael know that tea company is really well known in the industry. But it seemed like neither of them expected Emily's fiancé, Daniel, to move up the ranks so quickly after joining. I didn't expect it either. Some parts of Daniel's story made me feel a bit uneasy, but I decided to believe him since he talked about being recruited by tea company and climbing the career ladder really fast. As we talked about other things, I was curious to know how they met and got together. They said they met through a friend they both knew. Daniel was looking for someone special but didn't want to go to matchmaking events, so he met Emily through a friend he trusted. Emily wasn't actively looking for a boyfriend, but she decided to meet Daniel when her friend suggested it. I really like how Daniel always makes me smile. His clumsiness is kind of cute too, Emily shared. Hearing them talk about their feelings was like hearing something really sweet, even though we weren't eating anything sugary. Their closeness and love for each other were really clear. But there was something that bothered me. As they were leaving our house, Daniel and Emily were talking about bringing rice and gifts. While they were busy with that, Daniel came up to me a bit separately and asked suddenly, "Hey, do you maybe not remember me?" His question caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but tilt my head in confusion. "Do you really not remember me?" he asked again, sounding doubtful. His face was handsome, but I couldn't recall any close friend named Daniel. I tried hard to remember, but I couldn't. Seeing me struggling to remember, Daniel sighed a little, looking disappointed. "Well then, let's exchange contact info. And please tell Michael later." I forgot to exchange contacts with him. I was shocked by his sudden informal tone. Even if we were close in the past, I couldn't remember it. And I couldn't recall being close with someone who would speak so rudely. Inside, I was full of questions like, who is he? What kind of relationship did we have? But since Emily was there, I didn't think it was the right time to ask or say anything, so I stayed quiet. After we exchanged contact info, I decided to text him to clear up my doubts. But before I could, he messaged me first, saying, "I'm surprised. The girl who used to sit quietly in the corner of the classroom in elementary school is married before me. Your face hasn't changed much since then, so I recognized you right away. Growing up, I lived far away, and in elementary school, I was teased by many classmates. Those memories are painful, so I moved away with my family for middle school. In the new city, I met Michael, a wonderful friend, and we became close. I'd rather not think about elementary school." His words surprised me, so I asked, "What do you mean?" I didn't want anyone to misunderstand, so I explained that Michael was involved in our messages. We agreed that Michael would be included whenever Daniel and I needed to exchange info. I didn't share my background or reasons with Daniel. After explaining, Daniel smiled warmly and asked, "Do you remember being called PU girl in elementary school?" The term PU girl had a specific meaning. It was used to tease me by my classmates because I was from a single-parent family. Even though we weren't really struggling financially, there was a time when other moms assumed we were just because my mom was a single parent. This rumor might have spread among the kids and led to the teasing. Because of this, and because my mom was considering taking legal action against the moms spreading rumors, I decided to move to a new place. Since then, I haven't heard that unpleasant nickname, which used to cause me so much trouble. But one day, I was surprised when a man admitted he didn't even know what the word poor meant. I calmly told him, "Please watch what you say. You're my sister-in-law's fiancé, and that's all. Please don't say things that don't make sense." After that, he didn't message me anymore. Maybe he took my words seriously and realized he shouldn't be rude. But watching all this, Michael seemed really uncomfortable with the way the man spoke, and his face changed quickly. What is that guy even thinking? It's like he doesn't realize he's talking to the sister-in-law of the woman he's going to marry, and bringing up stuff from elementary school and acting like nothing's changed. "That's just crazy," Michael said, his anger showing. Seeing Michael so upset, I tried to calm him down, saying, take it easy. But I was also worried, so I called my mom right away and asked her to find a class photo from my elementary school days. I wanted to see if there was a classmate named Daniel in it. Mom quickly found a boy named Daniel and said on the phone, "Wasn't this Daniel the one who used to bully you the most?" Suddenly, I remembered everything I had forgotten. Daniel was indeed the main bully. Just to be sure, I asked Mom to send me the photo. Looking at it, he looked quite different now, bigger and chubby. That's probably why I didn't recognize him. After that, I decided to look into things further. A few months after our first meeting, I got a call from Emily, which was surprising after such a long time. "Rebecca, we haven't got your RSVP for the wedding invitation yet. Are you and your husband planning to come?" "What wedding invitation? We were really looking forward to it, but we never got it," I told her. Emily seemed surprised and said, "I definitely sent it. Maybe something went wrong. Anyway, I'll bring it to you tomorrow," she said, sounding very sincere. The next day, Michael and I got the invitation directly from Emily, and we told her we'd be there. At that point, we had no idea what would happen at the wedding or how it would affect us. No one could have guessed what was coming next. On the day of the wedding, Emily looked stunning in her pure white dress, like an angel. I congratulated her with tears in my eyes, hoping for her happiness and ours too. But Daniel, the groom, quickly soured the mood. He pointed at me, surprising all of us. "Why are you here? I didn't invite you," he said, looking very displeased. It seemed like Daniel went out of his way to make sure Michael and I didn't get an invitation. This woman grew up with just her mom. When things got tough, she ran away. Maybe she had some money problems, and now she's with a rich guy thinking life will be easy. "She's living in a dream," he said. Despite not knowing anything about my past, Daniel falsely accused me. Michael, sitting next to me, clenched his fist in anger. But I told him to calm down. Daniel kept making false accusations against me. "I have an important job at a well-known company. Are you planning to use your connection as my sister-in-law to get money from me if I marry Emily?" he asked firmly. His friends were shocked and started getting excited. They must have the same narrow view as Daniel. I went to a staff member and asked for the microphone. Daniel looked like he expected me to say something emotional and illogical, but I stayed calm and said, "It's ridiculous that you, who can't even remember the face of your own company's president, call yourself an elite. Think carefully. If you want to cut ties with me, I'll be in the president's office tomorrow. We'll go through HR procedures." After handing back the microphone, I confidently returned to my seat with a calm demeanor. Michael stood up and walked towards the exit. Soon after, Emily followed him. Seeing this, Daniel called out to her, "Wait, why are you leaving too?" "I'm just trying to end things with her." "If that's the case, there shouldn't be any problems, right?" Not fully grasping the situation, Daniel spoke to Emily, who gave him a cold look. "You really don't know Rebecca, do you? She's the CEO of T Company. I respect and deeply admire her. I can't forgive you for insulting her. I'm ending this engagement right now. You've ruined such an important day. Be prepared." Shocked by Emily's firm words, Daniel was taken aback. Emily talked to the venue staff and removed her wedding dress. She told the guests that the banquet was over, and the wedding would now be a simple meal gathering. She made it clear that this wouldn't happen again and firmly blamed Daniel for the breakup. The next day, as I had promised, I calmly waited for him in the president's office. Two big, muscular employees stood beside me, ready to act if he tried anything during our talk. When he came in, he seemed confident at first, but that soon changed. He sat down and looked tense. His behavior, coming in without permission and not even greeting, was rude. It was clear he didn't understand the basic rules of the company. "No way. I can't believe you're really the president. This is unbelievable," he said. "If you did a little research, you'd find the president's info on our website. Didn't you check before coming?" I asked. "Well, there were some things." He trailed off. It seemed he hadn't taken my words seriously or bothered to find out the truth. Maybe he thought I was joking or lying in front of all those guests. I told him, "I'm considering terminating your contract." "What? You can't make such a quick decision over a small misunderstanding. I'll talk to the Labor Standards Inspection Office." He tried to persuade me carefully, but I calmly put a copy of his resume in front of him. "You lied about your education here, didn't you? And you claim to have skills you don't actually have, like Excel and video editing. Is that true?" "Well, about that," he started. "Falsifying information and providing false reports are valid reasons for us to terminate an employment contract," I told him directly. He looked surprised at my statement. In fact, I had a strange feeling about him since our first meeting. Afterward, I checked everything thoroughly. Normally, our company doesn't use headhunting methods. Even if we do, I personally meet and interview recommended candidates. But I don't remember having a deep conversation with Daniel. He joined through our regular hiring process and started as a regular employee. He claimed to be aiming for promotion and said he was skilled with certain software, but he actually wasn't. That's why he never got promoted. His self-assessment was very high, and I found that suspicious, so I looked into his attitude. He was lazy at work and seemed content just to be part of the company. I tried to help him improve, but he didn't change. Now that he's broken off his engagement with Emily, there's nothing special between us. He continues to act unpleasantly, making me uncomfortable, so I see no reason to be lenient with him. I promptly asked Daniel to leave the company. Since he had only been with us for less than 6 months, there was no need to consider severance pay or handing over specific duties over such a short time. "Can't you help me out, as an old friend?" he pleaded. But I coldly replied, I don't see any reason to continue our relationship, and arranged for other staff to handle his immediate departure. It seems he was hoping for financial help from his father, but because of the outrageous rumors he spread, that didn't happen. There's a past incident where my mother sued for defamation, and Daniel's mother was the victim. My father paid compensation for damages once before. Faced with a similar situation with his son demanding compensation, my father likely reached his limit, stopped providing financial support, and cut ties with him completely. Afterward, Daniel took care of his elderly mother while being pursued for compensation. Eventually, he vanished, seemingly taken away by people in all black clothing, and nobody knows where he is now. Someone might eventually come forward with information about his whereabouts, but I have no plans to actively search for him. Initially, Emily was deeply hurt when she learned about her fiancé's background. But time heals, and about 6 months have passed. She's starting to see it positively, saying it's probably best we didn't get married. Lately, her smile has returned, and she's even looking for a new partner. Seeing her happier again, Michael and I are truly relieved. They're even talking about having children now.
I thought this place was full of talented people, but it turns out there's a middle school grad among us. These were the words of our new manager during his first introduction. From that moment, I decided that I didn't like the manager. As someone who values academic credentials, having a subordinate who's only finished middle school must have been displeasing to him. And with the arrival of the manager, my fate took a drastic turn. Well, I have my own thoughts on this. My name is Tyler. I'm a 32-year-old company employee. I work in product development and research, and recently, I obtained a patent for some technology one developed. Being young and having a patent, I even got interviewed by a specialty magazine. What I developed was an antibacterial and antiviral fabric. Right when I developed this, an infectious disease started spreading, and masks disappeared from the market. So, we quickly decided to use this technology to make masks. I wanted to evolve this fabric into something for medical use. But, due to the company's direction, we ended up making masks with this technology. The technology was patented and became a topic of conversation. Since masks were scarce, they sold well, even at a higher price. The factories we partnered with got busy, and we sold units in the billions over a few years. However, it's difficult to handle, and I often get inquiries as the developer. That's when there was a personnel change. Our department's manager was replaced. The new manager who came in was, in a word, an elitist about academic backgrounds. Up until then, no one had ever brought up educational backgrounds, but when it comes to academic credentials, I feel uneasy. Moreover, the manager saw right through me. When the manager said during his first greeting, "There's a middle school grad among us," something changed in our department. The development department, being a prestigious section that gathers highly educated employees, naturally led everyone to assume that all members had college degrees. However, the manager's words started a hunt for who the middle school grad was. It didn't take long for them to find out it was me. "So the middle school grad that the new manager was talking about was you?" I was taken aback when a colleague, who until then had talked to me normally, said this. I had been avoiding the topic of educational background, so hardly anyone knew about mine. But the manager is big on academic credentials, and had checked everyone's educational background by looking at resumes when he took office. The truth is, I dropped out of high school. As a child, I was called a prodigy, always topping my class in middle school. My father was a university professor, and I took it for granted. I attempted a competitive high school on my father's advice. However, I caught a cold the day before the exam and failed to perform well, resulting in a failed entrance exam. I went to a local high school instead, where I was laughed at by those around me. Gradually, going to school became more difficult for me. By my senior year of high school, I had stopped attending and completely shut myself in. During the summer of my senior year, my father, furious that I wouldn't leave my room, told me if I didn't want to go, I should just quit high school. I blamed my father for insisting I apply to a competitive school, believing that if he hadn't, I would have applied to a different school from the start. Stubbornly, I snapped back that I would quit high school. Living at home became uncomfortable, and I left, almost like running away. However, needing money to live, I found a factory where I could work and live in, and somehow got hired. This was a textile factory, which also marks the beginning of my current career path. As I worked, various questions and points for improvement came to mind, and I began to research on my own. I submitted my research results to my boss, not expecting much. At first, I was ridiculed, but my boss's demeanor changed after reading the documents. This became the first step towards patenting the technology. After that, I joined my current department at the age of 20, and since then, I've been dedicated to product development and research. Having produced results from my development work for 12 years, I never thought I would be looked down upon for my educational background. Once it became known, however, other employees and seniors started to look down on me, just like the manager. Originally, being the youngest, I didn't really fit in with the others and felt out of place in the department. Working wasn't an issue, but because of this manager, it finally started to affect my job. Some people even ask me out of curiosity, "Why did you drop out of high school, Tyler?" But I didn't want to answer, so I dodged the question. Then, gradually, I started to be talked about behind my back. I had truly developed patent-worthy technology, but it seems they thought a high school dropout couldn't possibly do such a thing. There were even accusations that I had stolen someone else's research. When a senior casually said, "Come on, there's no way a high school dropout could develop this, right?" I felt despair. I lost confidence in being able to continue here. As the rumor spread, the scrutiny from those around me intensified. Finally, I was called in by the manager. "Because of you, the atmosphere in the department is the worst. Having a high school dropout here seems to be a bad idea after all," the manager said with a smirk. "Having a high school dropout as my subordinate is also embarrassing for me," the manager said, taking advantage of my silence to say whatever he wanted. Then he told me, "I'm giving you a choice, being transferred to another department or leaving this place. Does that mean I'm being fired?" I asked the manager, who laughed and said, "I didn't say fired. How about transferring to another department? Though, your salary will decrease. The sales department has commissions, and they don't need academic degrees there. Or maybe, transfer to the factory where academic degrees are even less of a requirement." I snapped at those words, impulsively retorting, "Are you looking down on other departments? Without the sales team, the products we develop wouldn't sell. And without the people working in the factory, the products wouldn't be made, would they? What are you talking about?" The manager laughed heartily at me. "Covering for each other because of your low academic backgrounds? Ridiculous. Listen, academic degrees are necessary. People with high academic degrees like me are the real winners." Then the manager said, "I'll give you 3 days to decide," and left. I talked to Sam in the sales department about this. Sam is the same age as me and the ace of the sales department. We hit it off at the first social gathering and have been the only ones in the company to keep in touch privately. The sales department is full of young people. Sam has real ability and looks after his subordinates. We have opposite personalities, but somehow we get along well. Sam is studious and has asked me a lot about my patented technology. He can explain things to clients that other salespeople can't, so it seems he's pushing this product more than anyone. Additionally, a certain medical manufacturer that Sam is in charge of has expressed interest in further evolving the technology. And I was interested to hear more. However, I decided to leave the company. Sam seemed disappointed, but after hearing my situation, he didn't try to stop me. 3 days later, I handed over the documents to the manager, saying, "Thank you for everything." This is the handover documentation. It included the development history and future prospects. Regardless of the manager and those in the same department who turned their backs. I was grateful to the company for hiring me, a high school dropout, and assigning me to this department. I created the handover document hoping the company would continue to develop. But when the manager took it, without even checking inside, he said, "I don't need this," and, unbelievably, tore it up and threw it away. Then, turning to a nearby employee, he said, "Hey, shred this," and the employee, holding the torn documents, immediately went to the shredder. I felt so frustrated I was on the verge of tears. The manager, grinning, said, "High school dropouts should disappear along with the trash." When I clenched my lips, it seemed to amuse him even more, and he laughed harder. "If I need help, I'll ask an employee with a high academic degree. There's nothing I need to take over from you." Hearing that, I felt a moment of clarity in the manager's consistent attitude. It was almost refreshing. I simply said, "Is that so?" and went to complete my resignation. A comment from a coworker in the same department. "I guess it really is impossible here for a high school dropout, huh?" struck me as I walked away. The day after I resigned, I found myself in Sam's car, heading to a hot spring resort. Upon learning of my official resignation, Sam took some leave to take me on a trip. While soaking in the hot spring, Sam said, "Man, our company is stupid. To drive away someone with talent like you, over something as trivial as academic background." I muttered, "It's not really about talent," but Sam shook his head. "With the technology you developed, a revenue of $300 million isn't a dream. In fact, since getting the patent, our sales have skyrocketed, and the company's performance has recovered. It was quite down for a while." I said, "But, with the infectious disease calming down, we can't expect more sales without a new product or new technology." Sam made a troubled face and said, "Yeah, that's true." After getting out of the hot spring and checking my smartphone, I noticed several missed calls. Looking at the screen, I was shocked. "What's this?" Sam peered over, his eyes widening in surprise. There were 100 missed calls from the manager. Out of caution, I decided to check the voicemail. It said, "Come to the office right now, there's a journalist here who wants to interview you." I remembered there had been a request for an interview about the patent. But I thought it had been dismissed because the manager hadn't taken it seriously. The journalist had interviewed me before, so they should have had my contact information. I considered explaining the situation to the journalist. Then, I noticed there were more voicemails. Inquiries about the patent technology. The others can't handle it. Contact us immediately, followed by a rather condescending message. While I was processing this, another call came in. As I was debating whether to turn it off, Sam said, "Just turn off your phone," so I thought that made sense and turned it off. After a while, Sam's work smartphone started ringing. It seemed to be a call from one of his subordinates, asking if he knew how to contact me. When Sam asked why, the subordinate explained that the manager had become panicked, searching for anyone who could contact me, and had been barging into various departments. The manager had ordered to contact even those who were off, so, reluctantly, the subordinate had called Sam. Sam explained, "I'll respond if the manager calls me directly." I didn't want to drag Sam into this and offered to call the manager myself, but Sam refused. Soon after, Sam got a call from the manager. "Get in touch with that high school dropout immediately," he ordered Sam, who he barely knew. He's always been that kind of person, but he must be in quite a panic now. When Sam put the call on speaker to hear what was happening, the manager said, "There seems to be a trouble at the factory, and they're saying only he can handle it. Also, a client has questions about the technology, and since he was in charge, nobody else can give a detailed explanation." It seems that not only was there a journalist wanting an interview, but also a factory issue happening at the same time. "But Tyler has already resigned, hasn't he?" "It seems like you forced him into resigning," Sam said. The manager retorted, "It doesn't matter if he's resigned, it's his fault for not properly handing things over. Besides, I offered him a transfer to another department. He chose to resign. I stopped Sam from replying and spoke up. "You're the one who tore up the handover document." Recognizing my voice, the manager yelled. "Where are you and what are you doing? I've left so many voicemails telling you to come quickly." I just sighed. "I have no reason to follow orders from you anymore, since you're no longer my boss. Everything you're troubled with was written in the handover documents, the very ones you shredded so meticulously." After saying that, the manager was at a loss for words. "Besides, your department is full of highly educated employees, right? There's no need to ask someone like me, a high school dropout. You were the one who said it, manager, that there's no need for a handover because you can ask the highly educated employees." Sam, standing beside me, crossed his arms and nodded in agreement. Since the manager didn't say anything, I continued. "About the interview mentioned in the voicemail, I've already contacted the journalist. They want to interview you next." Me, the manager sounded confused. I smiled and replied. After I explained the circumstances of my leaving, the journalist mentioned it might constitute power harassment and that there might be a case of wrongful termination. "So they're interested in interviewing you." After listening to the manager's voicemails, I directly called the journalist. The journalist felt sorry that I had left and, upon hearing the circumstances, said they wanted to help me somehow by proposing an interview with the manager. The journalist is kind but somewhat aggressive, so I believe they will indeed contact the manager. This could be damaging for the manager if it becomes public knowledge. Power harassment and wrongful termination. If the company finds out, my position will be jeopardized. The manager started panicking. However, I simply responded, "That's tough." Then Sam said, "Well, it's uncertain what will happen to the company itself. So you might not need to worry about your position anymore." The manager replied, but Sam said, "Then, we'll be excusing ourselves," and hung up. "What does that mean?" When I expressed my surprise, Sam turned to me and said, "You haven't decided on where to move next, have you?" I had been feeling too down to start looking for another job. After I answered, Sam nodded. "Remember the medical manufacturer I mentioned before, the one interested in the technology you developed? What about them?" I was taken aback by the unexpected offer. Sam had spoken to the medical manufacturer about me, and they were eager to have me join them. "By the way, I'm planning to move there too. And I'm bringing some of my team members with me. Well, our company puts a heavy burden on the sales department, and many are thinking of leaving. With Tyler gone and no one being able to handle inquiries, a drop in sales and performance is inevitable. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the company," Sam said with a laugh. Then, incredibly, I got a call from my dad. He had seen the article about me getting the patent and called me his pride and joy. We hadn't spoken properly in over 10 years, but he said he told me to quit high school thinking it would spur me to action. He wanted to apologize for leaving home but never found the right time until now. I also apologized to my dad. I had misunderstood him and unfairly blamed him for my exam failure, making me a shameful son. Reconciling with my dad and having hope for my new job, I felt refreshed. A few days later, the journalist who interviewed the manager contacted me. Thanks to that, the manager's power harassment and wrongful termination became rumors within the company. And it seems the manager was called in by the president. It seems he's being transferred to another department and demoted. Since he was part of those who looked down on me. Whether work became difficult or jobs were lost. The department's people who took over the inquiries in my stead seemed to be messing up. Angering clients with incorrect information, and losing potential new deals. Sam watched all this unfold before he resigned. After that, the performance of the department visibly worsened. I received a settlement for the power harassment and wrongful termination. I'm satisfied with that. Now, I'm developing technology useful for medical institutions at my new job. Here, there's no one who looks down on others for their educational background, and there are trustworthy people of my own age. I'm grateful to Sam and want to do my best here.